All right, hello math fans. All right, so today we're going to learn some pretty basic things. The first thing we're going to talk about is multiplication with variables. So we haven't really used variables too much, and I guess we used it on the first day. But remember, a variable is represented by a letter. A lot of times we use X, we use Y, we use Z, any letter of the alphabet. Some of them that we don't use O, and we don't use L, and there's just some, like S, right? Looks like O's. You have no idea that it's a variable or a 0, 1, and a 5, right? So we use variables, we said X, Y, Z, we use A, B, and C, etc. Okay, so let's talk about multiplication. It's actually pretty easy. If I have 18x, that's actually saying 18 times x. Okay? It's important to understand that. It's always multiplication. So I can write, and by the way, it's always written this way. It's always written with a number first, which is called a coefficient. And then you get your variable after that. So coefficient is first, and then the variable after that. So if you see something like, x times 13, it's really 13x. Okay, so with multiplication, I can have, 2 times 3 times x, and you basically multiply the numbers together. It's really easy. It's 2 times 3 is 6, so that's just 6x. Real simple. Okay, with negatives, just be careful. Remember, I told you back in the day, if it's an odd number of negatives, it's negative. It's an even number, it becomes positive. So, for example, let's start out a new page here. 2 times negative 3 times negative x. Okay, you got two negatives. I know it's going to become positive. So, it's almost like if you even look at it, as opposed to even keeping track of all the negatives, you can kind of look at it and say, oh, 2 times 3 is 6, times x is 6x, and it's two negatives, so it's positive 6x. Okay, I mean, you could say 2 times negative 3 is negative 6, and negative 6 times negative x. And by the way, negative x is really saying negative 1x. We don't write the negative 1 in there, but it's like saying negative 1x. But anyway, you could say 2 times negative 3 is negative 6, times negative 1 is positive 6x. So that's your answer. All right. I could do negative 1 times negative 2 times negative 3 times negative 4 times negative x. All right, so, well, let's count the negatives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is going to be negative, isn't it? Okay, so let's multiply the numbers together. 1 times 2 is 2, times 3 is 6, 6 times 4 is 24, and that's just a 1 there, right? So it's just 24x, and of course it's negative. Okay, that's really not that bad. I can even throw a fraction here if I want. So let's do that. What happens if I said 2/3 times 9x? Well, again, just you put it over 1, and so it's 2/3 times 9x over 1. You cross cancel. So 3 goes into 3 once, 3 goes into 9 3 times, and we have 6x over 1. And as I told you before, if it's ever over 1, you write it as just 6x. All right, not too bad. So that's multiplication with variables. Now, here, one more, because again, I'm trying to cover a lot of things that you're going to see in your homework. Negative 2 times negative 1 times negative 3y. That's pretty easy. Well, again, it's going to be negative. So it's negative. 2 times 1 is 2, times 3 is 6. So it's negative 6y. Pretty mellow. All right, so that's the first part. The second part is combining like terms. So let's talk about what a like term is. Okay? A like term is two parts to it. Same letter and same exponent. We're actually not going to worry too much about this right now. We're going to get back to that later because everything is going to be to the power of 1 right now. So we're almost really concerned about the same letter. And so if I put a a problem here and I said 2 plus 3x plus 7 plus 6x. Okay, the like terms are going to be the ones with the x's and the ones with the numbers. Those are like terms. Okay, so basically what you're doing is you're putting it together. So 6x plus 3x is 9x. 2 plus 7 is 9. And again, we're going to kind of cover this as time goes on, but this is called descending order. You put your variable first. And you put it first not in terms of x9, you do 9x, but then you put the variable first, and then you put the number second. Okay? And that's combining like terms. So let's do a couple more here. 2x minus 3y plus 7 minus 8x minus 2y plus 3. Okay, so a key thing here too is, math fans, I kind of have my students a lot of times circle the number and the sign with it. Okay, because sometimes people forget the sign. They forget if it's negative or positive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine the x's together. So it's 2x minus 8x. You got to use the same rules as before. 2 minus 8, opposite signs. So it's 8 minus 2, which is 6. And then the sign of the bigger number is negative, so it's negative 6x. That takes care of that. And maybe you want to cross them off to make sure you don't use them again. Okay, and then we have negative 3y and negative 2y. And that's going to give you negative 3 minus 2 is negative 5. So it's negative 5y. And then that's done. And then we're going to have 7 and 3. So it's plus 10. And you can't combine them any more together because these have different letters. And, of course, that has no letter at all. So those are all separate. And that is combining like terms. Okay? That's pretty easy. But just remember, you can't. Sometimes people like to do this. They like to have 5x plus 7, and they like to say, oh, that's just 12x. Boo! Can't do that, all right? Very, very bad. If they're not like terms, you can't combine them together. Okay, if they're like terms, you can combine them together. That's basically what the rule is, all right? So don't try and put those two guys together. 5x plus 7x is 12x. All right? So that is combining like terms. Let's try one with two variables in there. How about 2xy minus 3x plus 7y minus 5x minus 8y minus 7xy. Whew, kind of complicated looking, okay? But not really, because if you want, it's not a bad idea, again, to circle the number or the term with the sign. Okay, so I'm going to do 2xy minus 7xy, so that because these are like terms. So 2 minus 7 is the same thing as 7 minus 2, which is 5. 7, the bigger number, is negative, so it's negative 5xy. Okay, the next one I'm going to do the x's, put those together. Negative 3x minus 5x is same sign, so you add them. 3 plus 5 is 8, and it becomes negative 8x. So we got that one. And then 7y minus 8y, opposite signs, so 8 minus 7 is 1. 7, the bigger number, is negative, so it's negative y. And again, guys, notice I didn't put negative 1y. Okay, you never want to see a 1 in a final answer. So if you do 1x or 1y minus 3x, that's wrong. I don't want to see this. You should just say y minus 3x. Okay, it's assumed that it's 1. It's kind of like if I said, how old are you? Okay, you don't say, oh, I'm 1 times 14. Okay, that's great that you're 1 times 14, but again, you're going to get beat up. You don't want to say the 1. You want to just say 14, otherwise you're going to get beat up and you're called a big dork. Okay, and you don't want that to happen. So don't put a 1 in front of a variable. Even a negative 1. Don't say negative 1y. It's negative y. Okay? All right. The last thing I want to do is show you a little bit about distributing. Okay? And this is really basic because we're going to do more distributing later on here. But distributing is like saying 2 times x plus 3. And distributing means I take that 2 and I multiply it by everything inside of that parenthesis. So I have 2 times x is 2x. 2 times positive 3 is positive 6. That is what you do when you distribute. It's 2x plus 6. Okay, it's really pretty easy, but you just got to be careful about that. Okay, so let's try another one here. X minus 7 times 2. Now, you're like, well, wait a second. How come that 2 is on the other side? It doesn't matter. And if I were you, I would put the 2 on the left-hand side because I'm more used to that. And then you have 2 times x is 2x. 2 times negative 7 is negative 14. And that's your answer for that problem. Okay? Pretty easy. But I'll tell you, if you learn a good habit of distributing, it's going to help you out a lot in math. Because this is one of the causes of most of the grief later on in math is people, when they distribute, they only distribute to the first term, and like this problem right here, they do 2x plus 3. They're like, nah, I don't need to distribute that to the 3. It doesn't need it. Whatever's inside the parentheses, you're going to distribute that 2 to it. All right? So let's do something a little more complicated. How about 3 times 4x minus 3 minus 7x minus 8. Okay, so this is the only thing you have to distribute first. And then we're going to deal with this after the fact. So 3 times 4x is 12x. 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. Minus 7x minus 8. Now we combine terms. So again, if you want to do that, that's helpful. 12x minus 7x, that's an easy one. That's just 5x. And negative 9 minus 8, same sign. So 9 plus 8 is 17, but it's negative. So it's negative 17. And that's your answer. Okay? Let's try another one here. 2x minus 4 times negative 3 minus 2 parentheses x minus 1. Okay, that looks a little complicated, but it's actually not that bad. I'm going to move that negative 3 in front because I want to. 2x minus 4. And that sometimes gives people grief because it's like, well, what do you distribute, the 2 or the negative 2? Well, actually, you distribute the negative 2, just like you're going to distribute a negative 3 here. So negative 3 times 2x is negative 6x. Negative 3 times negative 4 is positive 12. Negative 2 times x is negative 2x. And negative 2 times negative 1 is positive 2. Okay, that's actually 90% of the battle is just distributing. Because combining like terms is actually pretty easy. Okay, let's circle these guys. And so it's 6x minus 2x is 6 plus 2 is 8. So it's negative 8x. 12 plus 2 is 14. Positive 14. Don't forget that. Sometimes people forget the positive 14. They just write negative 8x and a 14. I'm like, okay, well, what is the sign? Okay? So that was a little bit of distributing. It was multiplication, just to kind of get you guys familiar with some of this stuff. All right? Hope you learned a little bit there, math fans. You have a great day. Goodbye.